decided to hold his tongue. And yet he was bothered in his spirit for weeks as to how could he get people like her to enjoy the wilderness of God's creation. He knew that he could wheel someone like her out into a pasture, but never could they see deep into the woods or put their hand into a waterfall or something like that. And so he went searching the world via the internet and found a one-wheeled hiking chair that they make in France, and raised the money to purchase one and have it outfitted in a place, modified in a place in Colorado, and that began Luke 5 Adventures, named after the friends of the paralytic who carried him to Jesus. And the ministry has just taken off, and you'll see that in this video if we ever get to show it to you. If not, you're going to have to go.
We've given up.
It's on?
No, we gave up.
Oh, you've given up. Okay.
Paul, it's on our Facebook page.
It's on our Facebook page, so you can watch it when you get home.
Yes.
But anyway, it's a CBN news release that came out a couple months ago, because word is spreading about this ministry. And so much so that Johnny and friends found out about it, and Luke 5 has now been invited to a couple of their family retreats. The Tim Tebow Foundation found out about them, and they have been given 3,000 acres in the Pocono Mountains. The foundation was to develop into a fully accessible camp. And so the Tim Tebow Foundation has commissioned Luke 5 Adventures to come and to design their hiking system to be fully accessible to anyone with any type of disability. And so it's quite amazing how the word is spreading about this particular ministry. And so there's an organization on the west side of Cleveland, Sports Challenge.
Youth Challenge.
Youth Challenge, thank you. Youth Challenge that does adaptive sports. So their sole mission is to work with youth who have physical challenges to be able to help them be involved in any sport that they would want to be involved in. And they found out about Luke 5 Adventures and contacted Kevin and invited him to the Cleveland area. We found out about it as a family because we were in Alabama at a Johnny and Friends family retreat, and one of our daughters was a buddy for a little girl who just happens to be the daughter of one of the couples who is involved in leadership of Luke 5 Adventures. And on the last day of the family retreat in Alabama, they said, "Do you guys happen to live anywhere near the Cuyahoga National Park?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we're going to be there on the 4th of July doing a hike with a family because their two girls have one last request before they move to Iowa. They want to go on a hike in the Cuyahoga National Park." So we had no plans for the 4th of July, so we said, "Well, could we meet you there?" And we thought we were just going there on a family hike. And when we arrived, we saw this trailer with 3 of these one-wheel hiking chairs, and all of these people, and they were all equipped and ready to go on a hike. And we met these people, and then we heard the story about how the ministry began, and I met the man who is the leader of Youth Challenge, and then I met Kevin Schweiger, and he told me, he said, "Well, Paul, you know, this man is interested in Luke 5 coming to the Cleveland area. However, conviction is that Luke 5 be connected to a local church. And Youth Challenge is not a local church, it's a secular youth organization. And he said, so we've been praying for the last year that he would show us a church in the Cleveland area that has a heart for disability. And so I looked at him and I said, Kevin, I thought my family was just coming here to have a fun day, hiking, but maybe the Lord has something else in store. So that started some conversations. And so the elders have been talking for a couple months now. We have been looking at some documents as to what it entails to become a licensed chapter, the Cleveland chapter of Luke 5 Adventures, what it means as far as financial commitment up front. There are grants that are being sought out by leaders. There are relationships with Cleveland Clinic and Children's Hospital and all kinds of other things that just naturally flow into this kind of an outreach, which is pretty mind-boggling. On the first hike that we went on July 4th, one of the ladies involved, who's part of Grace Church, she said, Paul, we had this disability ministry and heart in our church, and we kept saying, how do we reach these people in our community? How do we find them? How do we get them to come to our church so that we can show them Jesus? And she said, we don't have to look, they just keep coming to us from Luke 5. It just keeps the hospitals and the rehab centers and all these organizations in the community find out about this ministry, and it all just happens naturally. So it's quite a fascinating thing. In your mailboxes, if you're a member, is an article written by Kevin Schweiger, which kind of tells a little bit of the story that I've already rehearsed to you. But in your hand is this one-page document that lays out the organizational structure of this ministry. So what we just want to lay out before you today is the people needs, what it would take to have this kind of a ministry under the umbrella of Cornerstone Community Church as the Cleveland chapter of Luke 5. And this mirrors the corporate structure of the main office in Cincinnati. And so they're now to the point where they're needing to start chapters because the interest is spreading all over the place. So there's the director who drives and oversees the ministry, not necessarily doing everything, but overseeing, making sure the things are happening. Recruits the volunteers, or what are called Sherpas. In the video you saw in the service this morning, you saw people like Ed and others who were walking alongside the one-wheeled chair, at times either carrying it from the front or the back. That's a Sherpa. And that term comes from, does that come from
mountain climbing, yeah.
Mountain climbing, okay. So that's where that term comes from. Develops partnerships with civic, public, private, church organizations, fundraising, leadership team development, the liaison to key support groups. Then there is the keeper of safety and training protocols. The recommended profile of this person, it's not required, but recommended that someone who's familiar with physical therapy, occupational therapy, perhaps a medical professional, athletic trainer. This would be a person who would be training and certifying the new volunteers. In other words, training them how to be a Sherpa, how to be in the front or the back of the,
Rosie.
it's called a Rosie, okay? The reason the chair is called a Rosie is because that woman in a wheelchair that Kevin saw at church that Sunday morning, her name is Rose.
Oh.
And so he decided to name the chair after the first woman who was given a ride in that chair. And so the chairs are called Rosies. It doesn't take any real skill to serve as a Sherpa. I was thrown in the very first hike. Ed was thrown in the very first hike. No training. No, we're not saying the training isn't needed. It is. That's why this position is important. It's just, we're just saying that, and safety is important. That's why there needs to be training. But it's not like you've got to be working out at the gym 3 times a week in order to be a Sherpa. Yes?
If I recall from the training materials, they had different categories of Sherpas too, right? There were base
Correct.
camp Sherpas, prayer Sherpas, people who were with the family.
Yes.
Just to care for them. So it wasn't always somebody who had the physical stamina to go on the hike or lift the chair.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, Sherpa term covers anyone who's helping in any way. Could be someone who is, did you say camp Sherpa?
A base camp Sherpa.
Yeah, base
right?
camp, in other words. So, at the Cuyahoga National Park, we all arrived in the parking lot at the head of this trail, and there were a couple of these pop-up tents where there were a couple tables like this with some water coolers and some snacks and some literature. There were people there to serve the families. Those volunteers would be Sherpas.
Or
On
engage
survey.
people who are just passing by going, what is this? Right?
Yes, on the hikes, people stopping and looking, what in the world is this? And asking questions. Engaging, everyone who's involved is wearing a t-shirt with a Luke 5's logo on it and engages conversation. We also envision gospel seed planting through literature. You all were given one of these, How My Friend Is a Disability. This is one of 5 or 6 resources we have produced in conjunction with Johnny and Friends. So I'm the editor of this series, and 4 years ago, the Lord providentially began a relationship between Shepherd Press and Johnny and Friends, and so we've started this series of disability-friendly ministry booklets. So I gave you this one because this is kind of a pretty generic entry-level, this is what a Sherpa is. Just a friend of someone who's got a disability. And how can we relate to them? How can we just be a good, godly, Christ-like friend to someone like that? Okay? There's also then background checks, just like in our children's ministry and youth ministry here at the church. Anyone who would be regularly involved in the Luke 5 adventures would need to have a background check so that we make sure that those who are being brought into the ministry who have disabilities, our families are protected as anyone else in our church is being protected. Then there's the coordinator who does a lot of the communication, event planning, someone who's got administrative, organizational kind of skills, logistics, the keeper of forms, that kind of a person. Then community development and ministry. This would be a person who would be pretty much the first people-person contact with, let's say, the mom of a child with disabilities, and the mom has just heard about Luke 5 Adventures. She perhaps is really concerned as to whether or not her son is really going to go for maybe she's got quite a few questions, anxieties, fears to overcome, and in her own mind. And so this person needs to be someone who can gently take that parent from where they are to a place of being comfortable, willing to give this thing a try. Someone who understands maybe some of the feelings of isolation that families with disability go through, fears and anxieties. This would be someone who might be suggesting ministry aspects along the way, identifying creative ways to deliver the mission of the ministry. And then media, someone who likes to snap a lot of pictures and post them on Instagram, and make sure that we've got the parents' permission. Some of the families with disability don't want the faces of their kids ever appearing in public. For example, the little girl that our daughter was a buddy for, we've been on several hikes now with them, and that's just their preference. And so anytime she is in any kind of a promotion for Luke 5, her face is blurred out. That's something that has to be respected. So that's all that kind of stuff happens in the spreading of the word through the community about this particular ministry. There's people who are just fun. You can come in if you want. Yeah, you can come in if you'd like. Welcome. There are chairs if you would like to sit. And there's also a bunch of pizza over here.
Well, there used to be.
Okay, so let me at this point entertain questions that I might be able to answer. Edward,
Can I just make a comment?
you may make a comment.
Okay, just to throw another bit in here that's also a need for the ministry is, Paul sort of alluded to it, but there is a pretty decent upfront expense to becoming equipped for Luke 5 adventures. Some of it is sort of smallish sorts of things, but the main things are the chairs. The Rosies are about like $5,800 or something like that a piece, and you might want to buy more than one. So, I mean, you can imagine, and then there's a set of tools needed and spare parts and some things like that that we take on every hike. So, I mean, and then we need transportation for getting the chairs to the locations, so we may need to buy a trailer. So, I mean, there could easily be a $20,000 or so upfront kind of cost. So bear that in mind as well. So if anybody feels financially led to donate to purchase some of these things, I'll throw that out there as well.
Yeah, thanks. And that's also one of the things that the director of Youth Challenge on the west side is working on, writing some grants that might be able to help with those initial costs. But that's all up in the air. It's not, it's something to pray about, how the Lord may supply some of those needs.
Speaking of Youth Challenge, Paul and I had lunch with Chris Garr, who's the executive director or whatever it is of Youth Challenge. And he's super pumped about this ministry and partnering with us. And he has contacts all over the Northeast Ohio in the disability community. So we'll be not lacking contacts in the area. But also, they have tons of volunteers for their adaptive sports programs. They do like 350 events every year. And so he said, if you need people, you need Sherpas, we'll be with you, we'll provide some labor as well. So just so you know that there's resources here. It doesn't rely fully on us, but we should be prepared to do the leadership parts of this and as much of the pieces as we can do among our people. I think it's just, our elders have been really captured by this ministry because it's a ministry not just to someone with a disability, but to their families as well. And we really want to reach families and have them plug into a community where they can receive discipling, support, and love, in a place, because a lot, like Paula has been saying the last couple of weeks, the disability community is the largest, I think it's the largest, unreached people group on the planet. And many of them feel like they're reluctant to go to a church because they feel out of place, they don't feel welcome and embraced, and they feel like they're a bother, and so they don't come. And we would like that to not be the case. So we really have a heart for these families. So,
Another one of the interesting things as far as gospel outreach is when we went on the July 4th one, Chris from Youth Challenge he brought helpers, and some of them were from Mayfield Heights. One was a high school teacher at Mayfield High with some high school students, and they were part of his volunteer team helping. And so I'm imagining this, that these hikes, when they happen, we let our church family know about them, and whoever wants to come on a hike can come on a hike. And so I'm imagining some of our, young people in our youth ministry who are just along for the hike and being a Sherpa, rubbing shoulders with youth in the community, and our people rubbing shoulders with other people in the community, and you don't know where the Lord, might take some of those contacts. So, quite an interesting thing that the Lord may end up using. So, yes?
So we purchase it, like us as a church purchases two
Yes.
roses.
Yes.
Okay? What if we have more than two, people with disabilities? Like, if we only have two, like I'm kind of confused how like the logistics.
Oh, yeah, well then you can only schedule, per hike, you can
Okay.
only schedule
However
as
many
many,
okay.
as you have rosies
Okay.
for.
Okay.
So they started, when they began in Cincinnati, they began with one chair, they quickly got two, they now own 6. So each chapter, has to pretty much grow at their own pace.
but there's another part to that though, and it is your hike may take you 45 minutes, and then you can reload, do another hike in 45 minutes, and reload. So you can get 6, 8 people with your 2 chairs, as long as you guys have some energy.
Yes, for
Another
example,
Sherpa.
the one that we scheduled in August, Denise, when we scheduled one in August, there were 3 time slots, same day. And so there were 3 chairs, 3 time slots. So there were 9 hikers. The person in the chair is the hiker.
Okay.
So there were 9 hikers that day.
They run, as part of their website, if we're gonna become a chapter, they provide the scheduling, up on the website. We would identify what events we're doing. We could direct people to the website to schedule those. They also do custom events. If there's somebody who has a desire to do something, and what was done in Cuyahoga Valley was one of those. It wasn't a scheduled event that Luke 5 did, but there's somebody who wanted to hike that area. So they reached out and arranged something for that to happen, personal for them too. So there's various ways that you will gather people together.
Yes, Ian?
Also, when the families other hikers who aren't part of the Loop 5 try to take pictures, you're supposed to like go in front of them. Right?
Yeah.
You mean
We
a
as-
Sherpa?
Yeah, we as Sherpas help protect the rights
Oh.
of the people,
Yes.
the hikers.
Yeah.
By intervening if someone is trying to take a picture of someone.
Just graciously get in front of the camera.
Yeah, photobomb.
No paparazzi. Any other questions? Yes,
Just
Jill.
to clarify what Terrell was saying, so when we have the organizational structure all in place, do we then tell the headquarters what we're able to do, like every other month? Do we decide how we schedule?
No, we operate independently.
We do, we set up all the events,
We set up-
but they do have registration on their site for all the chapters. So somebody can go to their site, get a list of what events, they can see what events in the Cleveland area are being offered, and they can sign up through there, you know, and that's just a place that they can do somebody can do some registration. Get an overall list of what all events are happening in all the chapters, but we're in control of establishing the events.
So it's a sharing of software.
Yeah.
So at this point, you know, the way we would move forward is the elders would make a decision to become a local chapter. We would then sign the license agreement and pay I think it's a $1,500 licensing fee. That begins the process. Then we trust the Lord to provide what's needed to purchase the first chair and the other things that come along with having a way to transport. Like, for example, when Kevin started, he started with one chair being transported in his Subaru Outback whenever it was needed. Now they've got a trailer that's pulled by a pickup truck that's got 3 Rosies in it. So it's a ministry that grows as it grows, and the Lord provides as it grows.
There is planned training, though, that would happen too.
Yes, and the
Right.
corporate office does provide them training, where they would have, for example, the training person, number 2, their occupational and physical therapist would come up here and do a day of training for us. For, I think, no charge.
Right, that was my understanding too. They would spend a day with those who are participating and volunteering, and they would go through that training. I would hope that we didn't talk about it in details, but I would hope it include things like the basics of operating the Rosie, maintaining it and caring for that, and then answering questions that we would have both on how the ministry works, deal with things like planning our events, like, you know, whatever questions we might have, like, do you guys cross streams with that thing, you know, I don't know, but,
And one of their guys is in charge of like the maintenance of the Rosies, which is basically a bicycle maintenance, they say. And once a year they go over it, and they said they would come and show whoever, you know, our person is who's in charge of that, the ways that they have modified their Rosies for certain disabilities to make chairs more suitable.
Like, Katie was able to sit in it without any extra,
Patty?
like padding and all that kind of stuff, but they have padding where they can support any type of, you know, like some can't sit up straight, so they support underneath to help make the ride as comfortable as possible for every hiker.
Yeah, or those with breathing tubes or tubes of some sort, there's special things that, you know, make all of that possible.
Plus there were like seatbelts, safety straps, just keep the.
All kinds of extra harnesses,
Their feet are strapped down.
and that's that thing that the person ahead of time, the community development, family intake person, the form that the person fills out ahead of time, includes all that stuff, like what special things are part of the person's disabilities, so that they know ahead of time how that chair might have to be tweaked a little bit for that particular person.
May I speak to
Yes,
that?
yes, Michelle?
I was really impressed by that facet of our experience on the hike. We went on the one in August, and I was very impressed. I got an email and a phone call from one of the people from Loop 5 a couple days ahead. And we had a phone call about Josh's interest in the hike, his abilities, does he need special accommodations? With Josh in particular, he has some physical challenges with that, but a lot of it is cognitive as well. Had a thorough conversation, and she really listened to what I was saying about his abilities and accommodated him completely. I was really impressed and very grateful.
Great. Any other questions? Yes, Chris?
Two questions. One is, what is the time frame for this? I'm sure it's a seasonal thing, right?
It is.
In this climate?
Yes, it's seasonal, and in August, when we did those 9 hikers, the 3 hikes in August, on that Saturday, it was, we had a very brief discussion, Kevin and Chris and I don't know if you were still around at that moment, but Chris at that point said his fall schedule was full with hockey and all kinds of other stuff that he does with his adaptive sports. So he wasn't looking at any hikes until spring, which I was very relieved by, and I just looked at Kevin and I said that, you know, if this is what the Lord has for us, that gives us a lot of time for planning. So we wouldn't be doing any hikes until spring. So if we make the decision to go now, that gives us about 5 6 months for planning.
I noticed that.
Summer, fall, or?
It would probably be a May through November kind of thing.
Yeah, I noticed the Cincinnati chapter has events going through October, through the end of October.
Okay, so-
And then they stop.
They stop at
It
the end
looks
of
like about
October.
an April to October is what they do in Cincinnati.
Okay,
We, of course, have flexibility.
so it's about a 6 months out of the year, is that? right?
Yeah, yeah, so I'm assuming our time frame is just as you said, we're looking to make a decision on the commitment. I'm delighted by the number of people who are here. That gives me confidence that we're gonna move forward and make a commitment on this, but, we're looking for these roles, and then we'll be looking to establish training. And we're looking for the list of servants to serve in these volunteers and acquire equipment, and trying to do that all in the next couple months.
Yes, Jen?
Is this open, is it only open to Cuyahoga County, or is it open like to Summit, people in Summit County or
Oh,
other
yes.
counties?
Yeah, we're looking at about a 4-county
Okay,
area at this
I
point.
made a list of 300 parks
Oh.
that are within 1 hour drive from the church.
okay.
And they are Cuyahoga, Lake, and Geauga, but they also go into Summit, Stark, Portage, Medina,
Okay.
that are all within a 1 hour drive from here. There's about 865 miles of hiking trails that are available to us.
We won't do it all in one day.
Everything from very easy ones, which would be like a paved, to asphalt trails, to natural trails that are quite rugged. We have a wide range. That's one thing God has blessed this area with, is
Yes.
rich natural resources.
Yeah, but in fact, the ledges is where we were this summer, those couple hikes, was stunning, beautiful. It was kind of aggressive. It was probably about as aggressive as we would probably do. And it was kind of good to see that, because you can do amazing things with
Yeah.
these, and it's quite exciting. Now, but I think we may have to identify in our chapter document what counties
Yeah.
we're targeting.
Well, it says that, but then remember, we asked Kevin about that, and it wasn't like a tight restricted region. It was, they advertised these are the counties we're targeting. That doesn't mean we're completely restricted on
Right,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
we can reach out further.
Right.
Yeah, at this point, we would be considered the greater Cleveland chapter. And then, let's say the ministry grows and grows and grows in the next few years, and it just becomes bigger than we can handle. And let's say a church on the west side becomes really interested and they want to start something, well then perhaps there becomes, an east side and a west side chapter. And then we delineate some counties and things like that. But for now, we would be the greater Cleveland chapter. Okay, any other questions? Chris?
The other question I was gonna ask was, what was the relationship between Luke 5 and that other group that was there helping with the hike?
The only relationship is that Youth Challenge is an adaptive sports organization on the west side who heard about Luke 5 and thought, oh my, this is a way that we can get our physically disabled youth into hiking without them having to create their own thing. So he said, well, we would do it with you. We would provide all the volunteers and staff that you need. But like I said at the beginning, Luke 5's conviction is that the ministry falls under the umbrella of a local church, which is one of the things that thrills us about them. And so the chapter
The mission
would
is
be
gospel mission.
owned. It's a gospel mission. It's
Yeah.
not just let's go have fun in the woods. So it's this becomes Cornerstone becomes the hub of the Cleveland chapter, and then we can utilize the resources of this other organization. One of which might be funding, because he's got all these connections with Cleveland Clinic, University Hospital, and that's where he's writing grants right now to possibly cover some of these startup costs. Right now, he's writing grants that might buy 2 new vans for his ministry, his organization, which is opening the door for Kevin to possibly buy his used vans for the 5.
One other question I was asked, and others may have it, that's related to financing. This is done completely free to the families. There is no cost at all the families. It's a complete ministry. So all of the resources come from donations that come in, right? So yeah, it's not a charge at all to the families to help offset that cost.
And
Kathy?
there's another foundation, just for you to be aware of, In His Steps Foundation. I would look at them. They,
So, talking about for funding?
for funding, yeah, and that's usually in the spring, so.
Okay. So one thing we're gonna be doing, I have a pad of paper here. If you're interested in staying in touch and being involved, you can put your contact information here. And also on the end, I put position interest. If you have an interest in being in any of these positions in the organization, let us know. So
And if you
before you
don't
leave,
know,
make sure you
just
write.
put a question mark.
Yeah.
Because we understand a lot of this is all new information. But, yeah, we just love to keep the conversation going. Yes, Megan?
So were there I know we have a short list of things that these 5 people do, but I'm assuming that this is gonna have to be, we have at least, 5 people make, a commitment.
Yeah,
They're gonna be here for a year. So is there a more thorough, job description that somebody's come up with, or amount of hours that they typically spend, doing these positions, just so,
No, but we've got people who serve in these roles that we would talk to, find out.
Yeah, I would also think for those who could, so I have another expectation that, like, just looking at their website, they have events planned once or twice a week. Surely not, they don't have the same set of Sherpas participating twice a week. So part of the job of the coordinator role would be to get everybody who can serve, to serve as a Sherpa role. Okay, what weekends are you available? What weeknights are you available? Can you serve for this event and do all that coordination? but it means that, you know, somebody who is serving in here isn't necessarily committed to going out on every single hike
Right.
that the church is gonna be running.
Right, and I feel like that is like way less of a commitment than like being the coordinator, right? Like somebody who
Yes,
signs up for
yeah.
that, it's gonna be
Yeah.
like.
Right.
Well, and also keep in mind that what they're doing now, the pace that they're doing now after 2 years is very different than what they started
Oh,
out.
yes.
You know, if they're doing eight hikes a month now, you know, they probably were doing only 1 or 2 at the beginning. So that might be where we start, 1 or 2 a month.
Yeah, we gotta figure it out.
For the first year, as we navigate, and we figure this out, and we just see what the Lord does with it. So let's be careful we don't become too overwhelmed with, oh my word, you know, what they're doing after 2 years. We start small and we see what the Lord does. Okay?
Maybe.
Maybe I'm gonna ask.
Yeah.
One more question,
Yeah,
Jeanette
what-
gets the final question.
I mean, do they have like somebody for first aid if something happens, or?
Yeah, that's all part of the equipment list too,
Okay.
that every chair has a backpack
Okay,
with like a bicycle repair kit in it, with everything that would repair a Rosie, and has a first aid kit in it,
Okay.
all that stuff.
okay.
Okay? Okay, capiche?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, let's pray. Thank you, Father, for the wonderful discussion and for the excitement around this door of opportunity that you are opening for us in this community. We long to have the heart that you have. And so we pray, continue to work in us. And Lord, give us that simple childlike faith to walk alongside you, to trust you each step of the way. There's a lot to think about, but Lord, we thank you that all we have to do is just learn to hold your hand as you lead, to trust you to provide finances, equipment, people. And we just ask for that childlike faith to do that as we walk with you. Bless us the rest of this day. Lord, help us to continue to reflect on the glories of the salvation that you've provided, that we've heard so much about this morning. In Jesus' name, amen.